The evening sun hung low over Willow Creek, drenching the rolling fields in molten orange. Dust drifted lazily through the air as I guided my old John Deere back toward the barn. The familiar rumble beneath me was comforting, steady, strong, and dependable, unlike the shiny new imports my neighbors flaunted in their driveways. Life on my family's land had always been simple. My grandfather built this barn with his own hands, and I'd spent the better part of my 52 years keeping it standing. The scent of hay and diesel mixed in the cool autumn air, a reminder that while times changed, the earth beneath our boots stayed the same. But change had a way of crawling in whether you welcomed it or not. That change had a name, Karen Whitfield. Karen moved in 6 months ago to the cul-de-sac at the edge of the farmland. Technically, she wasn't even supposed to be on HOA grounds. Her house was an odd one-off purchase where suburbia met country. But Karen had the kind of personality that didn't just stay within the lines. No, she drew new ones. For everyone else. And she wasn't shy about making sure we all obeyed them. Noise complaints about roosters. Petitions about unsightly tractors. A war waged against improperly aligned mailboxes. The neighborhood had quickly learned one thing: Karen's way was law, or at least she wanted it to be. Still, I had stayed out of it. I wasn't about to let some city woman with manicured nails tell me how to run land that had been in the Miller family for 3 generations. But that night, as I turned the tractor toward my barn, I saw it gleaming under the fading light like some silver beast out of place in the dirt. A Porsche. A brand new Porsche 911 Carrera, parked sideways across the wide wooden doors of my barn. I pulled the tractor to a stop, heart sinking and blood heating all at once. My barn and my sanctuary, my livelihood blocked like it was some spare parking spot at the mall. I climbed down, boots crunching against gravel, and walked closer. The car's polished surface reflected the fiery sky, flawless except for a few flecks of dust from my field that dared to mar its perfection. And then I saw her. Karen Whitfield. She strolled across the gravel in a designer blouse, phone in one hand, glass of wine in the other. Like she owned the ground she walked on. Her blonde hair was styled in waves that didn't move in the breeze, and her lips curved in a smirk that could slice through steel. "Evening, Mr. Miller," she said, her voice sweet but sharp. "I hope you don't mind. HOA's having a board meeting in my house tonight, and parking is limited. I figured your barn wouldn't be in use." My fists tightened. "Karen, that's not just a barn. That's my livelihood. You're blocking me in." She laughed, a high, dismissive sound. "What on earth could you possibly need a tractor for at this hour? It's not like anyone's buying hay in the dark." I stared at her, silence hanging thick between us. She didn't understand. She couldn't. Farming wasn't just a 9-to-5 job, it was dawn to dusk, and sometimes past it. Animals didn't wait. Equipment didn't either. I took a breath, steadying myself. "Move the car." Her smirk deepened, and she sipped her wine. "Oh, I will. When the meeting's over. Shouldn't be more than 2 hours. Surely that's not too much to ask. 2 hours. Blocked from my own barn. My father's tools. My hay. My tractor's fuel. My very way of life shut behind those doors like it was nothing." Karen turned to walk away, already dialing her phone again, already dismissing me like I was just another nuisance on her long list of problems to fix. But I wasn't some problem she could fix. I was done. My eyes drifted to the tractor still idling, its engine purring like a beast waiting for command. The metal giant stood there, sturdy and unyielding, built for work, not show. Unlike that fragile Porsche. I looked back at the car, parked there so smugly, like a crown jewel in the middle of my land. And a thought, dangerous and thrilling, took root in my mind. Karen thought her shiny toy was untouchable. That her rules mattered more than respect. That she could block my barn door without consequence. But steel and soil didn't bow to porcelain queens. The air seemed to thicken, heavy with unspoken war. My hand twitched toward the tractor's throttle. And in that moment, under the bleeding sky of Willow Creek, I made a choice. If Karen wanted to block my barn door with her Porsche, Then I'd show her what happened when country didn't yield to control. I'd show her the power of a man pushed too far. And when the dust cleared, she'd never forget the sound of steel crushing steel. The hum of my tractor seemed louder than ever, vibrating through the cool night air as though it sensed the decision I was about to make. I stood there, hand on the metal frame, staring down that Porsche like a bull sizing up a matador. Karen's voice floated faintly from her porch, sharp and commanding, muffled by laughter from the cluster of HOA members gathering in her living room. She hadn't even looked back. She assumed the conversation was over. And maybe it should have been. Maybe I should have walked inside, called the sheriff, filed some complaint that would take weeks to resolve. Maybe I should have bowed my head and waited the 2 hours she demanded. But then again, my father didn't raise me to wait. He raised me to fight for what was ours. I swung back into the tractor's worn leather seat. The smell of grease and oil filled my lungs. My hands gripped the wheel, calloused and steady. I pushed the throttle forward. The John Deere roared to life. Its growl carried across the yard, breaking through the laughter from Karen's house. Lights flickered on in neighboring windows. Curtains twitched. Folks knew that sound, they'd heard it for years. But tonight, there was a tension in it, a promise of something coming. The ground trembled as the tractor crept forward, its headlights cutting across the silver Porsche. The sleek car glistened, delicate against the brute machine rumbling toward it. Karen appeared on her porch, wineglass in hand, eyebrows furrowed. "Frank Miller," she called, her voice shrill. "What the hell do you think you're doing? You stay away from my car." I didn't answer. The tractor answered for me, its engine snarling, the weight of 3 tons rolling forward. Neighbors began spilling out of their houses, drawn by the noise. One of them, Tom Jenkins, a balding man who'd lived on the cul-de-sac for 20 years, jogged across the lawn. "Frank!" Tom shouted, holding up his hands. "Easy there, buddy. No need to do something rash." I slowed but didn't stop. My eyes stayed on the Porsche. Karen stormed forward, heels clicking on gravel, fury painting her face. "You wouldn't dare. Do you know how much this car cost? This is $150,000, Miller. That tractor of yours isn't worth a fraction of it." Her words only stoked the fire inside me. To her, value was dollars and cents. To me, it was sweat and blood. My tractor wasn't just worth something, it was priceless. And the barn she'd blocked? That was generations of work, of life. "I told you once," I said, voice low but carrying over the rumble. "Move the car." "And I told you," Karen snapped, planting herself between me and her Porsche, "you're going to wait until my meeting's over. This is community property, and I am the HOA president. That means my word is law. Community property. Law." She said it like the land had no history before her. Like her clipboard in board meetings rewrote time itself. I revved the engine. The roar swallowed her words. Her face blanched, then twisted with defiance. "You wouldn't dare," she screamed again. "If you so much as scratch it, I'll ruin you, Miller. I'll take your land, your house, I'll bleed you dry in court." The tractor lurched forward. Gasps rippled through the crowd forming on the street. Tom waved frantically, shouting over the noise. "Frank! Think this through. She'll sue you blind. Just back up." But it was too late. My tires rolled over gravel, closer, closer, until the steel teeth of the bucket hovered inches from the Porsche's polished bumper. My pulse pounded, my grip white-knuckled. The headlights reflected in the Porsche's paint, green and gold against silver. Karen's bravado cracked. She stumbled backward, clutching her wineglass like a shield. You wouldn't." The bucket lowered with a hiss of hydraulics. The first touch was delicate, almost gentle, the edge of the steel pressing against the Porsche's hood. A scream ripped from Karen's throat. The crowd shouted. Someone pulled out their phone, recording. And then, with one firm push, the hood crumpled. The sound was deafening, metal shrieking, glass shattering, the Porsche crying out like a dying animal under the weight of my machine. I drove forward, steady, relentless, the car folding in on itself like paper. The windshield spiderwebbed, headlights burst, the bumper snapped clean off. The bucket carved through the Porsche's body, peeling it open as though exposing its fragility to the night. Karen fell to her knees, shrieking, her hands clawing at the gravel. "No! My car! You monster!" But I kept going. The tractor climbed over what was left, tires crushing the sleek frame flat, the earth trembling beneath the act. Sparks spat from twisted metal, and smoke curled into the air. By the time I stopped, silence hung over Willow Creek. Only the faint hiss of the tractor and Karen's sobs broke it. The Porsche was no more than a mangled carcass under my bucket, unrecognizable, its shine extinguished. I killed the engine. The quiet that followed was heavier than any noise. Karen staggered to her feet, her face red and streaked with tears. She pointed a shaking finger at me. "You're finished, Miller." "Finished? I'll call the police, I'll sue you, I'll make sure you rot in jail." I climbed down, boots hitting the gravel with a solid thud. My neighbor's eyes followed me, fear, awe, disbelief mingling in their stares. I looked at Karen, standing there with her glass of wine spilling down her blouse, her once perfect mask shattered. "You blocked my barn," I said simply. The crowd whispered, some in shock, some in agreement. Sirens wailed faintly in the distance, growing louder. Someone must have called the cops the second the tractor moved. As the flashing lights drew closer, I felt no regret. Only resolve. This wasn't about a car anymore. It was about respect. About a woman who thought money and rules could strangle a man's way of life. But tonight, the land had spoken. And I knew, deep down, this was only the beginning. The flashing red and blue lights painted the barns, fields, and stunned faces in surreal color. My neighbors stood frozen, their whispers drowned by the sharp crackle of radios. Gravel crunched as two squad cars pulled up, sirens cutting off with a hollow finality. Karen was already running toward them, tears streaking her cheeks, arms flailing. "Officers! Arrest him! That maniac destroyed my car. He tried to kill me." Her shrill voice pierced the night, but the officers didn't rush to cuff me. Instead, they looked past her, toward the smoking heap that used to be a Porsche, and then to me, still standing by the tractor, calm and silent. Officer Daniels, a broad-shouldered man I'd known since he was a kid working summers at the feed store, stepped forward. His hand hovered near his belt, but his eyes weren't hostile, just wary. "Frank," he said carefully. "Tell me what happened here." Karen spun on him, incredulous. "What happened? What happened?" "He rammed a tractor into my car." "That's attempted murder." Daniels held up a hand, silencing her. His gaze stayed on me. I took a slow breath. "She blocked my barn door, Daniels. Told me she'd move the car in 2 hours. I asked her. Twice. She refused." Daniel's jaw tightened. He looked at the wreck again, then back at me. "And so you decided to do this?" My silence was answer enough. Karen shoved past him, jabbing a manicured finger into my chest. "He's insane. I want him arrested. Right now." Daniel stepped between us, his patience thinning. "Ma'am, back up." Another officer, younger, approached Karen, trying to calm her as she wailed about lawsuits and theft of property value. Daniels motioned me aside. "Frank, this looks bad," he said quietly. "Real bad. She's HOA president, she's got money, and from the looks of it, she'll drag you into court until you're bled dry." I nodded, my expression unreadable. "I know." He studied me for a long moment. "Do you regret it?" I met his eyes. "No." Daniel sighed, running a hand down his face. "I'm gonna have to take you in tonight. For property damage, at the very least. We'll let the DA sort it out." I didn't fight. Didn't argue. Just let them cuff me, the cold steel biting into my wrists, rough but somehow fitting. As they led me to the cruiser, Karen shouted triumphantly, her voice shrill over the murmurs of the gathered crowd. "That's right. Take him away. He's finished. Finished? But I noticed something Karen didn't. Not everyone was watching me with condemnation. Tom Jenkins stood near the wreck, shaking his head. A few neighbors exchanged looks, tired, angry ones, but not directed at me. No, their eyes lingered on Karen. On her smugness. On her poison. The seeds of something were being planted. The days that followed blurred into routine mugshots, bail hearings, waiting for court. My lawyer, a wiry old man named James Callahan, warned me the case would be brutal. She's going to paint you as violent, unstable, he said, flipping through papers in his office. Property destruction of this magnitude isn't light. If she pushes, she could add reckless endangerment. Possibly attempted assault. And what do you think? I asked. He leaned back, studying me. I think a jury of your neighbors might not hate what you did. Especially if they've had their own run-ins with Ms. Whitfield. He was right. In the weeks leading up to the trial, word spread like wildfire. Stories emerged: Karen fining a widow over improper flowerbed design, threatening teenagers with eviction for skateboarding, calling the police on a veteran who parked his RV in his own driveway. She hadn't just stepped on toes, she'd trampled whole lives. By the time court day arrived, the room was packed. Neighbors filled the benches, reporters lined the back, and Karen sat at the plaintiff's table in a sharp navy suit, radiating confidence. Her lawyers, two of them, looked smug as they shuffled papers. I sat beside Callahan, steady and quiet. The trial was theater. Karen took the stand, sobbing dramatically, describing me as a deranged old farmer with anger issues who nearly killed her in cold blood. She waved her hands wildly, milked every glance from the jury. Her lawyers paraded photos of the mangled Porsche like it was a crime scene from a war zone. They whispered about reckless disregard for human life and violent tendencies. But then came the defense. Callahan stood tall, his voice calm but cutting. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, he began, we are not here to decide if Frank Miller damaged a car. That much is obvious. What we are here to decide is why. He called witnesses, neighbors who described Karen's endless harassment, her abuse of power, her arrogance. Tom Jenkins testified how she mocked me in front of everyone, how she flat out refused to move her car. Even Officer Daniels testified, saying Miller wasn't aggressive. He was calm. He gave her chances. She escalated it. The tide shifted. Karen's smirk faltered. And then Callahan delivered the dagger. He displayed a stack of HOA complaints, dozens of them, all signed by neighbors fed up with Karen's reign. Complaints about her targeting, her intimidation, her threats. The jury didn't just see a man crushing a Porsche. They saw a man standing up to years of unchecked tyranny. When the verdict came, the room held its breath. On the charge of reckless endangerment, not guilty. On the charge of attempted assault, not guilty. On the charge of property destruction, guilty. Restitution to be paid. A mix of relief and tension swept the courtroom. Karen shot to her feet, shrieking. This is injustice. He destroyed my car. He should be in prison. The judge's gavel slammed. Enough, Ms. Whitfield. Sit down. She sat, but her fury burned holes through me. The restitution stung, $50,000 in damages. But it wasn't prison. And it wasn't defeat. Months later, the Porsche incident was still whispered about in Willow Creek. Karen tried to regain her grip on the HOA, but the damage was done. Neighbors voted her out. Without her crown of authority, she sold her house in a storm of bitterness and left town. And me? I paid the restitution, partly through savings, partly through neighbors who quietly chipped in. Folks who, for once, felt like someone had stood up when nobody else would. One evening, as I stood by the barn door, now free of obstacles, I watched the sunset paint the fields. My tractor sat nearby, scarred but faithful. Tom Jenkins strolled up, hands in his pockets. Never thought I'd see the day someone put Karen in her place. I chuckled. Didn't think it'd be me either. He grinned. Hell, Frank, you crushed a Porsche with a tractor. Around here, that's gonna be legend. I didn't answer. Just looked out at the land, the barn, the soil under my boots. In the end, it wasn't about revenge, or even the car. It was about respect for the work, the land, and the people who gave their lives to it. Karen Whitfield thought she could park money in front of heritage. She learned the hard way that steel and soil don't bow to porcelain queens. And as long as the land remained, neither would I.